Over pallets to multiple six-figure business. Get ready. We're diving in to Laura's journey on how she was able to grow her business from stuff that was headed to the trash. Let's go. Welcome to the Because I Can Live podcast. I'm Alison Prince, and I'm so excited about today's podcast episode because I've been watching Laura Hutcheon's journey for about 2 years now. And today she's going to talk about the details about how she got super scrappy in the very beginning and then grew her business to multiple six figures, some of the exact things that she did, where she made her first sales, how she was able to take it online, how she was able to deal with the growing pains. And then she actually sold this business February of 2021. So not that long ago. And then how she's pivoting into a new business. And it's a pretty cool story because you're going to hear the highs and the lows and where she wanted to quit and what kept her going. So today, get ready. It's going to be a fantastic interview. Here we go. All right. Hey, Laura, I'm so glad you're here with us today. Will you tell everybody how you started? I don't even know. Why did you start your first business? And then the journey of how you sold, started a new one. You just got so much stuff, so much goodness to share.
Sure. So I started back in 2011. I had a toddler and a newborn baby at the time. And it had been about a year since I quit my job as a dental assistant to stay at home with my kids. But with a growing family, money was tight and I wanted to continue to be able to stay at home with my kids. And so I searched all the work from home options that I had available to me. But they mostly involved some sort of data entry and getting paid very little. And then one day I was looking on Pinterest for inexpensive ideas to decorate my home. And it was during the pallet craze and everyone was making things out of pallets. And I found instructions for a DIY sign made from pallets, and on it were just some stenciled on painted flowers. And even though I had never made anything like that before, I was determined to make it for my home. I found an old pallet that my neighbor had stashed in the back of his barn and tore it apart with a hammer and crowbar. And over 2 hours later, I had sore hands and probably like a dozen slippers. But I had that thing completely torn apart. I'm so proud of myself. But later, I realized that was the absolute hardest way to destruct a pallet. But I cut the boards down, sanded them, and nailed them back together to make a sign and stenciled on my flowers. And it looked horrible. It was terrible. The paint bled under the stencil, so the edges looked fuzzy, but I was so proud of that sign. And I hung it above my master bed. And my sweet husband, he told me it was great. And he's like, you could probably sell something like this to people around town or to some friends. And so I thought about it and finally took a picture of the sign, like from a distance, of course, so you couldn't see the terrible paint lines. And people started ordering. They had custom signs that they wanted done. So I helped design them for them and started making them and selling them on Facebook. And I learned and got better with each sign that I made. After perfecting, or what I thought was perfecting, my building and printing technique, I started selling them in my Etsy store that I created. They took off and I was busy breaking down pallets and turning them into signs. Sunshine or snow, I was out there in the driveway tearing down pallets and sanding and nailing and making a big mess of things. But at night, I would gather up all the signs and paint them there on my kitchen table when the kids went to sleep. But I absolutely loved it. It was so much fun. I was creating something that people loved, and I was selling a product that cost me next to nothing to make. Because the pallets were free. I had businesses in town that would save their pallets for me, and I would go around with my truck and pick them up each week.
And how much were you selling some of those first signs for?
I was selling them. A 10 by 10 sign was selling for like $15.
Oh my gosh, that's so cheap.
It was so cheap. So I was selling them for 15 and making them for like $1 or less. So, but my labor was, way more.
Way more.
So, and then like a hard way, but eventually I ended up selling them for $35 each. So,
okay. I'm glad you moved your price up on that.
Yes. Yep. I slowly moved that up. But at the very beginning, I was like, I don't know, $15.
And even 35 for you personalize these boards. It wasn't just like mass run. I still think that's a heck of a deal.
Yeah. So I bought saw blades and then I used like the 99-cent bottles of craft paint. Like that's all that I use for my supplies. And over time, my style of signs changed. And then the pallet fad started to wind down. And I was so tired of cutting down pallets. And so I started ordering sheets of high quality Baltic birch plywood and cut them down to size. And then I framed them in with a skinnier piece of wood. And that method was working really well. And I could produce more signs quicker. But eventually I was so busy, I just couldn't keep up. I would have to close my shop down every couple of weeks to catch up on orders. Then as soon as I would reopen my shop, I would get a flood of new orders.
And is this all from Etsy and Facebook?
Did you all have Etsy and some Facebook? I kind of quit doing Facebook once my Etsy got going.
Okay.
But it was pretty crazy. And I noticed no matter how many orders I accepted, I still only could complete a certain amount of signs each week and month. Yeah. And I would get major burnout after a few months of working hard to reach my sales goals for each month. And, I'd have to shut my shop down for a week or two just to recuperate. And I felt like if I wanted to hit my sales goals, that I just needed to work harder and harder. And then I would just crash. I felt like I was running in the hamster wheel and going nowhere. And it was a process.
Explain kind of like the family side of this. So at first it's like super fun, right? Your husband's like, whoa, you should sell this. And you make your first sales. And I'm sure he's like, yeah. And your whole family's cheering you on. And then kind of what's going on in the background?
My kids were little and they would play around me. Like I remember them like riding their bikes and stuff on the driveway while I was cutting down pallets and making piles of boards, and they just kind of played around me. So I was glad I was able to work from home and worked for a time. But then when things got so busy and built up, it just wasn't working anymore.
Yeah, I had that too. Did you know I used to do crafts out of my garage?
Oh, you did?
I had a bandsaw. I would go get cedar planks of wood. We'd put them together because I didn't want to pull the pallets apart. Like I just didn't have the hand strength to do that. So I did something that looked like pallets. Yeah, I was right there with you. And I know the burnout. So when you're talking about it and you're staying up till super late and your kids are running around and I guess that's why I asked you, like, what did you do? And we'll talk about how you kind of molded and where you've gone from there. But you get to the point where you're looking at your orders and you say, okay, I'm maxed and I cannot make any more without killing myself. And I don't want to kill myself. And then you go into this, oh my gosh, I'm exhausted phase. And is this really worth it? And it's just like this roller coaster ride. Okay. Yeah. So keep going. You're burning out, you're getting orders, you're burning out, and you're getting sick of this cycle.
I remember waking up in the middle of the night. So I would work up until like 2:00 in the morning when my baby would wake up to eat, and I would go in and nurse and then go to bed. Be like, that's my time to go to bed at 2:00 in the morning.
You're wiping all the sawdust off and like washing your hands with paint.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Crazy. But I was just exhausted after a while of doing that. And I did that for years. Mm-hmm. And I was making pretty decent money, with those signs that didn't cost very much to make. But the physical demand was high. And in October of 2018, I had hit a wall. And at that time I had 4 kids. Family life has just, was added upon and got super crazy. And I was constantly getting the major mom guilt, which I'm sure a lot of business owners can relate to. Yep. And even though I was home with them, I worked all the time. And so they just played in the background. And my house had stacks of signs all along the walls. My garage had piles of wood everywhere and a layer of sawdust over everything. When I would back my car out of the garage, I had to turn on the windshield wipers to like, yeah.
It's raining sawdust. It's not raining tacos. It's not raining rain, snow. It's staying sawdust.
Yeah. It was funny, but yeah, so I had just finished a big show, Swiss Days in Midway, Utah, and I had another show coming up in a few weeks and that I was stocking up for. And at that point, I'm like, I'm done. My plan was to make it through till December and then be done with signs completely and just let my business dissolve.
And was this in 2018 or 2019?
2018.
Okay. You want to be done then?
Yep. Wanted to be done. And then I was just like cruising Facebook, I guess. And I saw your ad and watched your masterclass on YouTube. And it was then that I knew that I needed to invest in myself. So I either needed to make some major changes to my business or just start something new. Mm-hmm. And I had some new business ideas. I wanted to do like the magnet boards that were coming out, the letter magnet boards, and thinking, oh, great, I could do that, but I joined your course and suddenly there were just so many options. Mm-hmm. And it just brought a new excitement to things. So it was just exactly what I needed to move forward. And so I binge watched and read all the sections of the 0 to 100K system and started making plans to build my business. So with your help, I was able to systemize a lot of things. I hired a few friends in town to help assemble and paint signs for me. I would cut wood down and print out the vinyl stencils and then load everything up in my van, paint and stain and all of that stuff, and then take loads around town. I had 3 different stay-at-home moms working for me at one time, and it cut my workload down a ton. And I was able to take on a lot more orders. But I was still spending tons of time running things around town. So yeah. And then, so I had never thought about outsourcing things from China either. So that was a new concept for me and learned all about that.
When did you start bringing that into your business? Was that in 2018 or did you try it in 2019?
So it was 2019.
Okay. And it was right after, I want to say it was like right after COVID hit and you posted and you're like, oh my gosh.
So it hadn't been COVID yet. I was playing around with signs and getting samples through 2019. Like I said, I was still playing around with like the magnet board idea. So I was getting samples for that. And then the idea for the pre-made signs, like pre-assembled signs, came to me and pursued that. But by the end of 2019, I had them in hand, ready to go.
Okay.
So, by the end of 2019, with the signs that I was still putting together myself, I had cut my workload in half and quadrupled my sales numbers by the end of the year.
Okay, so can we talk about that for a second? Wait, celebrate first, because that's really darn cool. Tripling your numbers and doing less work. What was the thing where it helped you to say, you know what, I've been doing handmade for like 7 years now and I'm getting burnt out. And yeah, you came in and I tell people all the time, quit doing all the work. But what was the thing that really got you to say, you know what, I've got to do something? What were some of those things where you're like, okay, I can actually let go of some of the control? Because as you're handmade, like, to have someone else make something that you've been making for so long, that's really hard to do. What were some of the things that you did to be able to hire someone in so that you got the same quality work out?
Yes. So that was a big struggle for me to just let that go and have someone come in and paint those signs. At that time, I was still painting. And then I transitioned into cutting out wood lettering from a laser. But it was really hard. So I'm like, I know how to paint these signs. I'm the one that knows this. And I really, it was a mental challenge to just let that go and be like, hey, I'm going to teach someone else to do this. So I had some girls come in and we just sat and crafted together and went over all the steps. And there were some trial and error days, where I'm like, this doesn't look so great. And I did have to let some people go. I'm like, this isn't going to work out. But once you find the people that you can communicate well with, and they're picking things up easily, I had a good team going for a little while. It was good.
Okay. So if someone came to you and I was like, all right, Laura, I'm doing handmade right now, and I either want to grow or I'm getting burnt out. What are 3 pieces of advice you would give to someone that is thinking about letting other people come on and help them, or helping, maybe even importing? Like, that's a whole new ballgame too. What are some tips you have for them to help them to let go of them doing it 100%?
Yeah, I would say, find someone that you could trust, for one, and just bring them on and see how they do. And then, I had to really think about how I could have them pre-made, because it just wasn't working making all of the signs myself. And I didn't want to have an employee using a saw and everything, cutting those boards down. So I would say, just think about your product and how you can simplify it. What things do you have to do yourself? Like I felt like I needed to do the designs and find the new designs myself. But then you set up a system to where, all of your things will be done a certain way. It's like I cut out the vinyl, and then the girls, they would take the vinyl, put it on, do the base layer of paint, and you just have to find a system for it. And then you can start letting those things go that you don't have to do yourself.
And I love that you brought that in, because I've seen so many people bring someone in and they're like, okay, just figure this out. They don't even know what to figure out. And so having a system, it's like you have the ingredients in your head. You've got to get those ingredients out and create a recipe. And then you give them the cookbook to get the same exact results from that. And so I love that you had the second one is systems, because it is so crucial to not just send someone in and say, just figure it out, because they don't even know what to figure out yet. Okay. So right. What's a third? Do you have a third?
The third is just it's a mental thing. You just have to kind of talk yourself through it and be like, let it go. You can do this. It's the next step to growing, is letting go of the control.
Yeah, totally. And I've actually found, as I brought people on, they do my projects better than I do now at this point, because that's what they're solely focused on. They're not focused on the taxes to the shipping to the products. They're focused on one thing.
Right. When I hired my first employee in our warehouse, she was amazing. She picked up on everything. And by the time I hired my second and third employees, I had my first employee there with me, and I'm showing the new girl how to do things. And she's like, I actually figured out a better way to do this. And she showed exactly what she did. I'm like, are you kidding me? You can train her. And so she trained the second employee perfectly. And it was wonderful.
That's so great.
Yeah. It was awesome.
It is when you can see, okay, if I can just let this go and have someone come in, and yes, you do have to trust them and you do have to have systems. But then they become so good at it that they can keep training the next and the next and the next person, and you get the same results. Oh, I love it. Okay. So let's speed up. So you're hiring people, you're tripling your revenue, COVID hits, you're still growing like bonkers. And then keep telling the rest of the story, because this is a good one.
Yeah. So when COVID hit, things were, I was so worried that when COVID hit, I was just going to plummet. So I put out tons of deals. And of course, we all know what happened. Like, people sat at home and ordered things, and our sales skyrocketed. And I'm like,
were you on Shopify by this point? Sorry. I cut you off.
Yes, I was on Shopify.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So yeah, we just thought we'd scooch on by with our bunch of offers that we had out. But yeah, it made us explode. And I just kept those deals and offers going. And so we stayed consistent and kept moving. So we were able to move into a bigger warehouse. I eventually had 3 employees working for me, and we just had so much fun together. And the best part, I only needed to be in the office 2 hours a day while my kid was in preschool.
Nice.
So I went and picked him up, and then I did some computer work at home, sitting on my couch instead of at the office, and it worked out great.
That's so great.
Meanwhile, on the personal side of things, so 2020, my husband and I have been dreaming about moving to North Carolina for years. And
you were in Vernal, Utah, right?
Yes. Sorry. You're in Utah, dreaming of moving back to North Carolina where we used to live before. And my husband had a great job and my business was doing well, and it just was never happening, but it was always our dream. So couldn't pull the trigger, but we took a trip out to North Carolina, summer of 2020, and it really solidified things for us. And we wanted to move so badly. And I kept thinking about this quote that says, "A dream is only a dream until you make it real." Mm. And then I was listening to a seminar from Dean Graziosi, and I can't remember the exact quote that he said, but it's pretty much don't dream your life, live your dreams now. And that hit me so profoundly. And I'm like, we can't keep working like crazy and not live with hopes of one day living our dream. We decided we were going to make it happen. So I am a firm believer in writing things down and putting it out into the universe that like, this is what we're going to do. Once it's on paper, it becomes almost a fact to me, this is what we're going to do. So whether it's in like business or personal life, it works. So I got home from our trip. I printed off a calendar and made a timeline of when it was all going to happen. I wrote down like when we put our house up for sale. I had my husband write down when he was going to turn in his notice at work. And writing down the moving date, it almost was like clockwork watching it happen. And we were working towards these things and making them happen. But it was just really neat to see it all come into play. And we actually hit the road a day early on May 31st of this year. So,
okay. But wait, we got to go back. You have a warehouse now with employees.
Yes.
Hey, talk about how you can't just like pack that up, right?
Right.
Talk about what you did.
Yeah. So the fall of 2020, I was so torn between taking the business with me or selling it. And this was right after you sold your Personalized To business. Mm-hmm. And I was so inspired about your sale. And
that was fun.
Yeah. So I was so back and forth. And you recommended to me that if I wanted to sell it, to try and do it before fourth quarter. So, and I wasn't even planning on selling it until after fourth quarter. And so I just listed it, and I'm like, well, if it sells, it sells, but if not, we'll just take it with us, but it would just be a lot more complicated, but we'd make it work. And after a couple of months, like we had an offer, and we had several people like come and like be interested in the business, but ultimately we sold it. The people contacted us the end of December, and it was sold by February 1st. It was no longer mine, and it couldn't have gone to better people. They picked up right where I left off, and they're running with it, and just makes me so happy.
There's so much in here that you're just kind of glazing over like it was so easy, because like it was meant to be. But you live in a little tiny town in Utah. It wasn't like this big area where a lot of people could find or would want to live there. Like, how did you list it? Where did you list it? How did you find these people? Is it still in Vernal? Did they move it? Like, I want all those questions. Are those all those answers?
Yeah. So that was a huge concern. I'm like, no one is going to buy this company in Vernal. It's just a small little town, So anyways, so yes, my process of selling the business, it was so fun. And I don't know, I say fun, but it was exciting more than fun.
For sure.
But so when I decided I wanted to sell, before I could actually list my business, I had to figure out how much I could list it for. And I had a great accountant, and she was able to crunch numbers for me to give me a roundabout price, or a roundabout business assessment. Mm-hmm. And then I counted all my inventory and then made a list of assets and how much they're worth. And that kind of solidified the number that my accountant gave me, and then made some minor change, like adjustments. And so this process is kind of like selling a car or a house that you want to list it for a little more. And then once you negotiate, you're right where you want it to be. Mm-hmm. So once I had it listed, I Googled an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, and I had that ready to send to people who are interested in the business. I was just able to download one for free, and that helps protect you and your business. They're not allowed to disclose any of your information to anybody. So I repeated that process several times with people and answered all their questions. And with the people that ultimately bought my business, we moved forward and verbally negotiated on a price. And then they sent me an LOI, a letter of intent, saying they wanted to buy my business. And then the closing date was 30 days after the letter was signed.
That's so fast. 30 days.
It was so fast. It was like a whirlwind.
And is it still in Vernal? Did they keep it there?
It's still in Vernal. So they,
that's awesome. Yeah,
one of the owners is in Ohio. So she flies out to Salt Lake, and that's where her daughter lives, mother-daughter team. And they drive 3 hours out to Vernal to check on the warehouse each month.
I love how like you were inspired to sell the business. Like, okay, I saw Alison do it, but I think someone else would have inspired you, because these owners were supposed to have this business so that you could go live your dream. I love how I don't believe in coincidences. I believe that everything's aligned, and how this all lined up is just, it's just so fun to see. And you're like, I did my dream, I sold it. And now you're living your dream in North Carolina. And okay, keep going with your story. I don't want to give it away, but you got layers, and like, this is all good stuff.
Oh, you're good. Yeah. It seriously lined up so perfectly. I'm like, this is what we were meant to do. This is like, God has been preparing us, like all of 2020 and beginning of 2021, things lined up so perfectly for us to move and live our dream. It would just, I'm like, it was God. He had his hands in it. Even didn't think he did,
Did you think sometimes there were, like, okay, it's not going to sell. We're going to have to take the business. It's not going like I thought it would. Did you ever have any of those, or were you just always like, yeah, this will sell?
Well, I didn't know what was going to happen. And then every time, that I sent out my NDA to people and they ask questions, I'm like, oh my gosh, this could be it. Like, and I go like, look this person up. I'm like, okay, they can make it work. And, I get all excited, and then I don't hear from them, And so, yeah, we did that a couple of times. And then, so when these people contacted us, I kind of felt like the same thing, like, oh, okay. And it was right after Christmas, and I don't know. But yeah, it was amazing. It was fun to see that whole process go down.
So cool. Okay. So now you're moving in North Carolina. You're in North Carolina. Your entrepreneur heart hasn't stopped though.
No. So
I like how you said no.
No. So when I knew that we were going to move, so that was middle of the year in 2020, I started thinking about a new business. Mm-hmm. And in November, I started a company called Cotton and Crate. And I wanted to simplify things. I love doing handmade, but I was just over it. And so I thought, I just want to do something that I don't have to make, but still feel like I could be creative. And so I thought, okay, what if I could design, designs and put them on pillow covers? And so I started that business and we just started doing pillow covers. And then we added rugs and table runners and placemats and different things like that to it, and pillow inserts. And we've got several collections now of different pillow covers.
I've got a whole collection in my house right now, by the way.
Yeah.
Look at me. Thank you for designing those. I get it.
So it's been really fun. Me and my husband, we work together on it, and I do get the designs put together and send them off to China, and then they come to me on my porch, and it's the funnest thing to open up those boxes and see the colors and have them coordinate together. It's still a gratifying job, when you compare it. But so I do the marketing side of things, and my husband, he does the fulfillment side of things. So we just kind of divide and conquer that way. It's kind of fun.
Love it. Okay. Such a fun story. Okay. So you went from like literally plying boards apart from each other, rusty nails, to getting some things started to be made in China. And now you're fully made in China. You've sold a business, you've moved, you've done a lot. And it's been almost, are we at a decade now?
Yeah. Yes. It's been 10 years.
10 years. Okay. So newbies that are just starting, who are maybe in the wood plank stage, what would you tell them to do? What would you recommend for them to grow their business?
I would say set it up in a way that you could get things off your plate and eventually sell it if you want to, and to stay organized. That was my biggest regret during that 30-day period of between them giving me an offer and us closing on the business. I was running around gathering all the documents and putting together, like organizing my files and doing all those things. And so that's the biggest thing that I'm doing with my new business is organization. I just started right from the beginning. I've got my designs all nicely put in folders. I have lists of manufacturers and contact information. I've got another list of supplies, cost, where I purchased them from, and how often I purchase them. And then I've got so many lists, but I've got them all saved nicely in my Google Drive. And so that way, if one day I decide to sell this business, or if I hire someone to do a job for me, I've got all that information neatly in my Google Drive.
Anything else? I got set it up to sell it and stay organized.
Yeah, just do things where you don't have to do everything yourself, and think of things that you can hire out.
Yeah, I love hiring. And it's not just to take my load off, but I think that we have a fun time when we work together. And so I want to work with amazing people and to be able to bring them into my world and be able to write them out a check and know that it never felt like work. It just felt like a good time, being productive, having fun. I think that's such a win-win in so many ways. I don't think work has to be the 9-to-5 grind, wearing professional business suits and briefcases anymore. I think we're redefining what work really is. So Laura, thank you so much for coming on and for sharing and for all your success. Can you tell everybody where to find you?
Yes, absolutely. So you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Cotton and Crate, just all spelled out. And our website is cottonandcrate.com. And I'm doing a coupon code for your listeners. off their entire purchase. So they just need
40% off.
40%.
That's huge. Thank you.
Yes. And so they just need to use the code ICAN40.
ICAN40. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Everybody go shop. Go shop. Awesome. Laura, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you and sharing your journey and just being an inspiration for so many others who are in that handmade space, wondering if they can cross over, how they should cross over. And then for others who are thinking about selling a business and how they've been able to do it. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Fun interview with Laura. Let's go over the top 10 takeaways. Number 1, invest in yourself. Heck yes. I say that all the time. Number 2, systematize your process. 3, hire out where you can. 4, find people you can trust to help you. Number 5, figure out how to simplify your product. Number 6, let go of things that you don't have to do. Let someone else do that. Number 7, talk yourself through it step by step. Write it down. Cross off the things that are just fluff and get to the things that are going to really move that needle. Number 8, don't just dream your dreams, live your dreams. Number 9, set up your business in a way that you can sell it in the future. And then number 10, stay organized. Many times I talk to you about Trello boards, getting that LLC. The simple little things are going to help you to be able to grow your business and then eventually sell it if you want to. All right. Hope you loved that podcast episode. I'll talk to you later. Bye.